Hey party people, this is Jeremy from Jambalaya Plays Games, and today I'm taking a look at Mutants, the card game by Lucky Duck Games. And this basically is a 2 to 4 player game where you are trying to build up mutants in your lab, and then basically as you deploy them you'll have an ability, and as they start to move out you will also have an effect that takes place as well. You will kind of have something that's similar to a deck building thing, but ultimately you're trying to put this over here in your freeze area so that you can bank them for points at the end of the game. Now during a round you're trying to get as many nice little advanced mutants, and then you're also trying to place them so they add power to this dominance track. This dominance track is kind of like the point giver for the round. So what happens is as you move up here and you gain power, and you get to the point where you're up here, you get to the highest point and you have to gain power. Let's say you had to gain 2 power. You would move your opponents down 2 spaces like that. And then eventually, let's say you keep moving them down and they just can't recover or anything like that, and you end up with your turn where this is all the way at the top and you got this little kind of red area right here. You basically end the round, even in the middle of the round, and then you would score and get both these bonuses, and the other opponents don't get anything. So that's called dominating your opponents. Pretty cool idea, but we're going to kind of go through that, and I'm just going to show you the beat of a round. So basically you start the game with these 6 cards, and these 6 cards are like your general regular Joe Schmo cards here. They kind of have these chemicals, mutants or whatever, and they're going to be on the top left corner. These are kind of like your DNA makeups, to eventually, when you want to buy these mutants, we'll get to that, the more advanced ones. And then on the right, you're going to have these points. And these points are only scored when these cards are here in the freeze area at the end of the game. So it's important how you bank those. Now, you will only have these 6 cards during a round. You will not do 5 actions and then whatever, and then you pass it on. You will take 1 action, the opponent will take 1 action. You will take 1 action, the opponent will take 1 action. So it's very important to know that. Different deck builder mindset here. Okay, so you're also looking at 2 things. Each character has a deploy ability when you put them down, and then it also has an ability when it gets kicked out. Okay, so let's go ahead and start there. On your turn, you're basically doing this. You are deploying a character. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now it says 2 power. I'm going to go ahead and move these back. Sorry about that. I'm going to move this back, and I'm going to be I'm going to be the purple player. So I will move it up 1, 2. Now I'm already at the top of the track. Okay, now I'm just going to stay over here so you have an idea what's going on. Now at the beginning of my next turn, I would have to move this left or right. Okay, so I have to move this to an empty spot. Now what's going to happen is over the round, I'm going to basically be moving things left and right, so I can move this left or right, but I have to move it to an open space. And then I would keep moving this thing and taking these powers. But now this is where the thing comes in. Eventually what will happen is you'll get to the point where you'll have things that you have to move left to begin your turn, or left or right to begin your turn. So you have to choose which way you're going to push. If I push right, this ability will activate, and it says you may freeze this mutant. And freezing means I put the card like that. Okay? Now, my other action on my actions on my turn are actually like this. I can deploy a mutant, which I've been doing this whole time, or I can breed a mutant. So what I want to do is look up here, and let's see, I'm going to put this one here instead, sorry. I'm going to do this one right here, which is, I'm going to get this Bio Hedgehog. In order to get this Bio Hedgehog, I have to spin cards that have the same icons on them. So what I would do is I would spin these face up, and then I would put them into this spot, and that would kick out this right here for my turn. Okay, that's that one. With my last card, and notice I only have 6 because we're going back and forth, depends on how I spend my cards, I would put this one and I would incubate. So I would put this one down here, and then I can take any one of these advanced mutants up here, and notice they have more victory points, and I can put this over here in my incubator. So what will happen is when we go and we finish a round, the next round I will be able to put this card on top of my deck, so that when I go to grab 6 cards, I know I have a cooler card in here. That's just one of those little kind of strategy techniques in here. So let's just look at some of the abilities that are in these cards. So you're going to have a couple different things. You have this one right here. So let's say if this player was being dominated, and dominated basically means if the person's higher than me on the track, then I get to knock that person out in the same spot. Okay, so I was pushing this out. This begins my turn. And let's just say there was a card on the left side here. I would be able to knock that card out. And then that way there's no ability that would happen if this card eventually got pushed out. It'd be knocked out. Okay, so let's say there was that happened. But instead, we happen to have this card right here. It says, knock this down, knock this mutant down, and I defend it. Okay, so I would defend this. I would defend her because she's a defender, and I would stop that attack from happening. Sorry, I would stop that attack from happening, which is pretty interesting. So you have somebody that would defend. There's actually defense in this game, but that would knock her out too. Okay, so it would save someone and knock them out. There's also this one right here, the alien, which has a cool little ability. Even though it's a basic, it copies the deploy ability of another character. So I could say, hey, you know, I'm going to copy this deploy victory because it's going to get me back up on that dominance track right here. This person's ahead of me. 1, 2, like that. So there's a lot of different little mechanics in here. I'll even show you some of the more complicated ones. Matter of fact, this will also help you with end of the game scoring. So if you have any things with this icons, like I have this one right here, I would want to make sure that I score those extra victory points at the end. But I got to make sure this card here is also in here. And then you remember this Leech Lord that I had in here? As we go through the 5 rounds, and I have to eventually, all these cards get in here, and I have to draw 6 cards, and I don't have any more, like, you know, your hand, I have to freeze one of these cards, and freeze means put it in there. So what card would I want to freeze? Let's see. Okay, later on in the game, probably want to freeze this, because I know I'm still going to get points for that. Okay, so I would get points for all of these at the end of the game, because they all match that icon right there. Okay, so that's pretty interesting, I think, all around, since this game is not like one of those deck building games where you just kind of slap down cards and do like 5 actions at once. But I showed you all the actions in the game. I think maybe one more I think I need to show you. Yeah, like this one right here. There's just a couple different icons that I can show you. Some of these actually have, like, as long as this card is out here, this ability always takes place. So let's say you gain. When you gain, this ability always will take place. Or you breed. So if we bred and made one of these cards, you would always get 2 dominance. So this is a good way to kind of keep things in your favor. But to be honest, remember, if I knock them out, then that ability doesn't take place. There's a strategy to that. This one right here, I can pick up 1 card from my hand and discard 1, so that helps me get back to my hand and get a good card out of it. There's a lot of different little abilities, and once again, they all come from these awesome decks. These decks are pretty awesome. So much variability in this game. I can't even describe it. I'm kind of overwhelmed with how many variables there is to this game and how awesome this game could be as you learn to draft and do all these different modes like that. But once again, the end of the round, it just depends on who's on top, okay? And as we move to the rounds, as you can see, the points get higher and higher. So let's say we were in this round, and I'm going to go ahead and third player right here. And I would say, hey, this one round I get right here, I get 7, and then everybody else would get 3, okay? Let me go ahead and move in there. Maybe you didn't see, my arm was in the way. You would say, hey, this one gets 7, purple gets 7, yellow gets 3, and red would get 3, and then, then we get 3, and then red would get 3, and that's pretty much the round, okay? That's very, very basic stuff, and then you keep going. Whoever has the most points at the end wins, but you also got to make sure that you add these points up as well too. And that's pretty much the game of Mutants. I'm going to come back and talk about my thoughts in this game because it is really interesting. Play this one a lot. Let me share my final thoughts. All right, party people, final thoughts on Mutants, the card game by Lucky Duck Games. First of all, I want to make sure I make a correction. When I was doing I was making an advance, I was breeding, I started out my turn with this alien in the active slot. It's supposed to move to the right to begin my turn, or the left. I was supposed to move it to the right because it was an open slot, and I made that mistake before I put this down here. So I just want to make sure you know that. I'm going to probably add it into the notes. But my thoughts on the actual game. This one is very interesting. As you can tell, different mindset. You're not spending a ton of cards at once and buying them from this big market row. You're actually buying them from these decks that you have chosen or created on your own. And right there, that makes the game very interesting. These decks are so different. These advanced decks that you buy, these pre-constructed decks that you buy from, present different scoring opportunities, different ways to, kind of evolve your deck to the point where you're, kind of pushing towards certain actions. The ones that have the infinity markers in there make things very interesting. So you're kind of paying attention to one slot and not the other. You're trying to push everything out one side as much as possible. You have cards that discard a lot. You have cards that freeze for a ton of points. So you got to attack them. You got to attack defense. You have that thing in there. I just didn't show you everything that's available, but there's so many things. There's actually this one that even like, you place the card and you immediately discard it, and then an effect takes place. Or you immediately discard it, and then another card comes out of your discard pile. There's just so many interesting types of things that go on in this game. And it's just beyond, it's a different mindset, and it's an innovation on deck building that was really unexpected to me, because I've never seen this before. I've never seen a game like this before, as far as deck builder-ish. So if you're looking for something that's refreshing and a different take and sort of innovation, this might be the game that you want to be looking at. Even for people who are not a huge fan of deck builders, probably because they feel samey, this is actually something that would be the next level of a deck builder. And it doesn't, I feel like the deck building thing is just kind of by definition, but it's a little bit more than that. And the reason why I feel like that is because of the scoring. The way you score is actually by taking cards out of your deck and then freezing them. I think that's a very interesting mechanic, scoring mechanic. And on top of that, the dominance track is really cool, because it takes you away from what you're doing on your board and pushes you over to this thing and says, hey, you can't get dominated, because if you get dominated, you may actually give someone the entire round of scoring if it gets too bad. And if you give them the full dominance thing, boom, you get killed. I mean, you get crushed for the whole round. Everybody gets crushed. So there's that as well. And positioning is important. Attacking and defending is important. There's just so much going on in this game. And even the fact that just so many decks in there and different types of decks, this game is really interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm actually going to really pay attention to this campaign, because I want to see what they unlock and if there's any more ideas there. Heard about some solo play. Kind of excited about that as well. And I'll just leave it there, because there's a lot of really good things. This is going to be fighting for some Kickstarter dollars here at the end of the month. And that is my thoughts on Mutants, the card game by Lucky Duck Games. I hope today this preview was informative for you. I can never tell people what to do with their money. I never tell people that they should do something with their money. And I just leave it at that. Thanks for joining us today on Board Game Revolution. My name is Jeremy from Jambalaya Plays Games, and it was a pleasure to do this preview today, so I want to thank Lucky Duck Games for allowing me to do so. Please feel free to like, subscribe to the channel, or leave some comments. I will definitely come back in here and try to answer as many as possible. And with that, thank you for your time, and you have a wonderful day.